Hello, folks, and welcome to Got Your Back, brought to you by DLR Vinyl Products. Nobody puts in wood, windows, or siding anymore. So why would you build a wood fence or deck? Do it once. With high-quality, maintenance-free vinyl, you can call my brothers Rick or Rob at DLR Vinyl Products. They've got locations in both Calgary and Edmonton. As we welcome in my long-lost brother here, Jason Strudwick. Struddy, it feels like it's been months and months, my man. Like we've barely been talking anymore.
Yeah, and let me apologize for, was it intentional or not that I blocked your cell phone number for the last 3 weeks? So you had to reach out through, I think it was a Facebook or I don't even know what it was.
I think I used Randine's phone. I used Randine's phone, and suddenly you were answering that for some reason.
And he pretended to be her, which was even creepier. But anyways, you think back to that playoff run, and for us there in the media or fans or just hockey fans, like it was a relentless pace. We were every day. You're thinking about the team is doing, how they're playing. Is this guy hurt? Like it was. Then all of a sudden it ended. And I remember looking at my wife and like, well, what do we do now?
What happens now? I never talk to Ryan anymore.
Well, that's it. And in the mornings trying to get over, to figure out what went right or what went wrong. Like I loved it. When I look back to it, I loved that run. It was so much fun to be just around it. Right.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
And now it's funny, I know the guys at the end, I think as a fan, you don't always appreciate how hard it is and how far you go and you realize you don't get it. And now for the team, like the owner, or not the owners, but the manager and the coach, they have to start at day one and they got to build it all the way again. And it kind of starts now to try to get back to where they were just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good run for them. And, we debrief things a little bit afterwards, but there's lots coming up here in the next week or so. And I think that's what we're going to focus on for today's podcast, because we got the draft coming up, but more than just getting up there and playing, picking players to put into, slot in different spots for the future. A lot of this is about roster reconstruction and trying to add some pieces, maybe move some pieces out. It's an important offseason for Ken Holland. Back last year was as well, but this year I would argue every bit as much. So let's get to the breakdown, brought to you by Park Mazda, where the newly redesigned 2022 CX-5 has arrived. You can check out the brand new all-wheel drive sport design trim with its turbocharged engine, and you can see all the available colors and trims in stock at parkmazda.ca. Okay, the place I want to start here, Struddy, is with a report that Pierre LeBrun put out the other day, just talking about potentials, unrestricted free agents that the Oilers could be pursuing. Let's assume Evander Kane is moving on. That's just the headspace I'm operating in, is that Evander Kane will be moving on. And he bombs out the name Claude Giroux. What did you think when you first heard that name? And what do you think of that as a potential fit for the Oilers?
Well, first off, and this isn't Pierre, but for other people suggest, players are going to be willing to take a discount to come here and play with the Oilers. Well, in the history of the league, I have seen very few players take a discount to come anywhere. Now, there are the examples of Spezza joining Toronto, but that's a much older player playing at home and wanting an opportunity to play home. I get that. But the suggestion that players are going to want to come here to play on a discount like Evander Kane did, well, first off, Evander Kane was in a much different place. The guy had his reputation was in disarray, let's say. He hadn't played in a long time. I remember so many people saying it was a risk when they brought him in. I didn't. I thought for the few short months, it would be fine. And he turned out to be an unreal deal at just over $2 million. But to think that you're going to get an elite player to come here to play with Connor and Leon on a team friend deal, I think that is hoping, wishing, and not going to happen. So with that being said, do I like Claude Giroux? Of course I like Claude Giroux. Every team in the league would like Claude Giroux. We everyone can talk about, he's got skill and he's smart and he's good on faceoff. What I like about him is competitive. And I think that everything the Oilers do this offseason should revolve around the idea of adding players that are competitive. As I watched that Stanley Cup final, those guys competed so hard. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go without skill. Don't jump all over me about that, people. There has to be a competitive nature in a player. And Claude Giroux checks off a lot of those boxes. The cost, it's not going to be a deal. I think we got to get through that.
Yeah, I mean, Listen, it's 21 goals, 44 assists, 65 points. He's getting on in age a little bit, but to your point, I mean, there's a hunger there with Claude Giroux, right? We
Mm.
saw him in the playoffs a long time ago. Remember some of those battles he had with Sidney Crosby
Oh,
and how hard this
yeah.
guy fights. He's scrappy. He wants to win. There's a desperation with the way he plays and tries to win that I think would serve this Oiler team well. He's a right shot, plays left. I think could probably play either side, which is good. That fits with some of what the Oilers probably are needing. I like it, and it also fits with the theme of trying to put players around McDavid and Draisaitl that have experience and not have them be the most experienced players. So I think for a number of reasons, it would be a good fit. I wonder what the contract value would be and the length. And, if you're Giroux and he's got a family, right, that you're obviously is at a different stage in his life and his career where, you can chase it to a degree, but you've got other people to consult with too. And moving north of the border isn't always the easiest thing for guys that have spent a long time down there. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. On Evander Kane, I just think that Kane is going to feel like there's a longer term deal out there. I think he's going to go to market. The timing of this is tough because of the arbitration hearing. For teams to go out and put an offer on the table for Evander Kane and spend their money in free agency on him, only to find out a week and a half later that he's now San Jose Sharks property again. And they've missed out on all the other free agents. Timing wise, it's a really tough thing to try and execute with Evander Kane. So I'm not sure that the Oilers will be able to wait. I'm not sure that there isn't going to be more term and dollar figure elsewhere anyways. It feels to me like it's most likely done unless it's a big circle back after the fact.
Yeah, and I think that's where the Oilers maybe have the advantage. I think all the question marks you just raised make it hard for a team to commit because you don't know what's going to happen. And if you think this is the final piece that you need or a big piece of what you need, and you're not sure what Kane's going to do, are you willing to place that bet prior to free agency? I think that's a hard one to sell. So I think that actually favors the Oilers, but then the Oilers ought to be patient and they could miss out on opportunities. So if I'm Evander Kane, I'm not thrilled with what's going on and how it's played out because it's not helping him at all. And I wonder if they're maybe not trying to force the team and the player to come to some kind of an arrangement prior to that date.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal scenario for everybody else involved is that they come to a settlement. And so he's free and clear of potentially landing back at San Jose's property. He's free to sign a new deal. I think that's ideal, but it sounds to me like the two sides are equally dug in on their position on the arbitration and maybe equally feeling confident and no one's blinking. And meanwhile, days are ticking off and the situation continues to be what it is. We haven't chatted about Puljujarvi in a little bit here. My dissertation is this. He was not happy with the role that he was given in the playoffs, views himself as a top six forward. And if he's not going to be considered and played like a top six forward, he's asked to be moved on. I don't think the Oilers view him as a top six forward. I think they view him as a third line player, and to pay a third line player $3+ million a year to be unhappy playing on a third line, I don't think they feel is a great idea. So, it's been widely reported. They're looking to move him. To me, Struddy, there's always been a disconnect about where this player sees himself and where the organization sees him. And maybe it's never been more evident than it is in this moment right now.
Yeah. See, I'm in the camp. I don't want to see Puljujarvi traded. I think that he's a guy. I see a 25 goal scorer there, and I don't think that's a big stretch. I don't think this is something to go crazy. I don't believe he's a 40 goal scorer. He doesn't have that finish. And now that can change, but it's pretty hard to go from, scoring, on a pace of 20 some goals, 25 to get up to 40. Especially when he doesn't have that natural finishing. I think he gets in a lot of good positions to score, but he doesn't have that ability to score. So I'd like to see him come back. And I think it's a bit short-sighted from the player's perspective. You look at some of the players you can play with on this team, there's a lot of high-end skill. So if I were him, I would say, I would like to sign a 1-year contract. I'll sign the 1-year contract, whatever, figure it out. And I'm betting on myself that I'm going to go and score 25 goals. Because if he scores 25 goals, the market's a lot different next year than I think it is this summer.
But Struddy, if you have a player, and you've done these exit meetings, right? So if you have a player that's sitting there going, hey, I know I didn't play very well in the playoffs, and I know I can do better than that. I didn't show well for myself. I believe in myself, and I believe I'm a top six player, but sure, I'll do a 1-year deal and I'll bet on myself and you put me wherever you need to put me and I'm going to prove you guys wrong. And I'm going to, if you've got a guy who's really digging in and saying these things to you, then that's one thing. But we've seen the way this goes when Puljujarvi isn't necessarily happy with where he's played and how he's been used, right? This has been a recurring theme. It goes back to when he first got here and wouldn't accept assignments to the American Hockey League. So do you pay a guy $3+ million, which with arbitration probably ends up being, to not be happy playing where he's playing, not saying the things as an organization you would like to hear a person saying after he fell off the face of the earth the way he did in the playoffs? You need to hear certain things as an organization to get a feel for where the player's at, because you say, well, yeah, but he's young and he's this and he's that. They've been down this road before with this guy.
Right.
They've done this dance before, and it looks like that dance is about to happen again. And there comes a breaking point in every relationship. And I just think that it's hit here, that the breaking point is hit. I think the days of asking McDavid and Draisaitl to play with Puljujarvi as the answer, I think those days are done. They need to put more consistent veteran players with a more reliable game in those spots. I think the days are done of asking those guys to have him on their line as the solution. He's a third line player, and if he can work his way up, great. If he can't, he is what he is. But the player has to be able to accept that.
Yeah, and that's a fair comment, but that's where the agent has to come in as well and talk to him. I had an agent, Donnie Meehan, who was very honest with me, and I like that. I wanted to hear the truth. I want to hear where we're at, or where I am at, relative to what other people think and see. Now, I'm not blaming the agent in this situation, but he has to be able to watch his player with a neutral set of eyes and not the rose-colored eyes. And I ask this. I think that Puljujarvi, I think, is a good player on a really good team. I really do think he can contribute. The challenge for Puljujarvi is, depending on where he goes, he's not going to play with the players he thinks he's going to. And I'm looking at a guy, Kotkaniemi, who went down to Carolina, who was on a good team and went to another really good team and had a really, 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 really tough year, stats wise. And so let's say he were to sign and some people want him to sign a long-term contract here. Okay, fine. Would you feel the same if it's a 6-year deal at $4 million? Fans, if you feel the same, if he's not producing at the rate you want, the money changes everything in this market and every market. So that's why I'm saying, if I'm Puljujarvi, my agent needs to talk to me. The coach needs to talk to me and say, listen, there are 25 goals looks a lot different than being on pace for. You actually score 25. The money's huge and we can move you next year. I just think it's a mistake. And honestly, Shogger, you have to frame it. You got to be honest. You're starting on the third line because Fogle and McLeod, that's a fast, big, strong line. That's a line that I would like to see and we saw in the playoffs, and I thought it did some good things. Yeah. But you have to sell the player. Now, if he doesn't want to buy it, well, then I guess you move him out. But you cannot trade this player for a draft pick. I don't care they don't have a second and third round pick. I know that they need draft players, but you need a warm body comeback that it can fit into your line and play, not work his way in, play today or play.
The problem, Struddy, is that everybody else in the league got to watch him play in the playoffs too, right? Yeah. Every other team around the league watched him play in the playoffs. Every other team in the league saw what we saw. And every other team in the league is going to have the same question marks that some people have about where this player's at in his development. And so if you think you're going to get return, top 6 return, I just don't think that that's going to happen, despite his high draft status and despite his age. So I agree with you. Trading him for a second round pick would not be great. And at that point, you're probably better off to just try and make it work with the player rather than dealing him for a pick like that. But they've been down that path, and they have done that. They've been there and they've done that. And so do you do it again, or do you just at a certain point cut ties? This is up to Ken Holland to try and figure out. The other thing to consider too, Mikko Koskinen is gone, and they were tight, and his comfort level in this room and with this team, and without Koskinen there, I think that changes quite a bit too. And for a guy like Puljujarvi, I think that stuff can matter. So there's that part of it as well. I'm not sure how much this player wants to be here anymore. I think, regardless of whether he goes somewhere where they view him as a top 6 forward or not, I can't help but wonder if and when a trade gets executed, he's just going to be happy for a fresh start. I can't help but wonder that. Even if the Oilers said, we do see you as a top 6 player, but we're trading you anyway. I can't help but wonder if a fresh start isn't what this player has kind of been looking for and hoping for all along. And if it happens, you wish him luck because he's a really nice kid. We've enjoyed the chance that we've had to talk to him. I agree with you. I think there's a player there. I just think that there's been a disconnect between where the player is and feels he is and where the team feels he is. And I think that's probably why this relationship will come to an end. I think that in some ways, Duncan Keith and Tyson Barrie are tied in together. I don't think the team is going to want to lose both these guys at the same time. I know that Barrie represents this tantalizing cap space, but if Duncan Keith shuts it down, I'm not sure they're going to move Tyson Barrie because they're going to have some work to do on the left side. Got to make sure you lock up Kulak, and then you got to decide, are you okay with Nurse, Kulak, and Broberg? And if you punt Barrie out the other door, now you got a right side you got to figure out as well. So I feel like these two might be tied together a little, Struddy.
Well, are you getting the sense that Duncan Keith is considering retirement?
Well, they don't have an answer yet. He hasn't given them a yes, I'm coming back. So yeah, he's absolutely considering retirement. I mean, for him not to have, if he fully plans on coming back, for him not to have told the team that yet is crazy. So absolutely he's considering it, or they would have their answer by now, or he's not being a great team guy. And I don't think that's the point. So yeah, I do think that he's considering retirement.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I thought he was not. I don't know anything, but I just assumed he'd be back. I just the kind of guy he is. I would just assume he would play. So I'm working on the assumption he will be back, and I think it's a dangerous game for fans and for the media to just start getting rid of all these guys that helped them get to the conference final, right? So Mike Smith, Duncan Keith, Warren Fogle, Jesse Puljujarvi, Tyson Barrie, Brett Kulak. So I'm at 6 players. They were pretty much regular players. So that's 1/3 of your team that got you to the conference final. Is a group you're looking at moving out, right? Zach Kassian to another guy. And we can debate his captain, but these guys got you there, right? Yeah. So I know that the top end drove a lot of it, but these other guys, it wasn't like they were totally, and Kane, and I'm not even talking about Evander Kane. Yeah. How can I forget that? That's 8. I'm at 8 players out of 20. They were dressed almost every single night. So, that's starting to get a little bit dangerous. So, obviously Ken Holland did something right because they got him to the Western Conference Final. Now with Barrie and Keith, I think that you probably are tied because you can't get rid of everybody. And everyone, what always blows me away is that everyone wants to create this cap space, and then you have this cap space, and you have to go and sign guys for more expensive contracts, and then you're pissed off about that. So, you got to be. I like Tyson Barrie. I think where he was suited is perfect. On that third pairing, he is perfect in that. Beside Kulak, now, if Keith ends up leaving, you keep Barrie. Does Kulak become your de facto second line left D-man? And is Broberg ready for every time minutes? Because now you're getting pretty young. Is Broberg and Barrie a good pairing? I don't think you want Broberg and Bouchard together, at least maybe in 3 years, but not right now. So to me, there's so many question marks back there that this magical cap space, I agree you need it, but you're going to spend it on something you're probably not going to like. It's Jack Campbell. So jump ahead to the goalie. Is Jack Campbell the guy that you want? He's not going to be, if he's as good as Smith was at $2 million, you will be thrilled. Absolutely thrilled.
Yeah. Well, the blue line is interesting. I think the organization considers Broberg ready for prime time next year. I think he's going to be, I think it's his spot to lose. I think he'll be there. I think they also view him as able to play either side, which is a little bit surprising for me. I wouldn't break a guy in on the wrong side if I could help it. But I think they really view him as a guy that's ready for prime time. And at a certain point, you marinate him, you overcook him, and then you just say, well, it's time to just let him go. Yeah. And what'll happen will happen, right? There'll be some good, there'll be some bad, there'll be some ugly, but there's nothing left for him, other than to play in the National Hockey League for his development. And I think they feel like maybe they're there at this point with Philip Broberg. So we'll see on Keith and Barrie. I don't think you want them both necessarily on your team at the same time. If you can help it, you maybe change that dynamic a little bit, look for more of a defender somewhere, because this team does need to do a better job of defending. And so how do you do that? Well, goaltending, right? If you can have decent goaltending, continue to have good goaltending, or get an uptick there. And then Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson can kind of fully get their systems in place and get this team playing entirely the way they want with a full training camp and to implement everything they want to do. I think if Evan Bouchard learned a tough lesson and can come back with defending in a different way in mind, I almost think it's a good thing that happened to him the way it did, because he's going to be chewing on that all summer, thinking about how do I defend better. He's going to play 20 plus minutes a night. If he's defending 10, 15% better, that helps the team. But I do think that they probably are short one of those solid defenders on the blue line.
Well, is Brett Kulak that guy?
I think they'd like him to be. I think they're going to try and get that done. But he's never really been that second pairing guy in his career, right? So do you depend on him to come in and do it? You know, it's great if you got Nurse Keith Kulak, like you're probably feeling okay, but you make a good point.
Yeah. So if let's say if Barry isn't back, I would love to see Kulak with Broberg, because I think that they're two very mobile guys. I think Kulak is calm. Like, I think he's calm out there, right? Yeah. I'm not sure that Broberg and Barry is a pairing made in heaven. I just don't see that, because Broberg, when it was I think his best assets is skating. And in the few games we saw, I thought he really skated the puck well and was moving well. Barry he can also feel the puck. I don't think those two guys are a match in heaven. I'd rather see Kulak with Broberg. And then, so
now Broberg on right, you mean?
That's what I would do, because I want to see him, because I can't have him on the second pairing. He can't play with Bouchard. I just can't do that. And then Nurse and Cece seem to be a match. So that leaves that left spot open. So in my world, what I'm saying now is both Keith and Barry are both gone. Right. So it could be because I want to have a matchup like that, but you're now trading out years of experience. And then who's the guy you're going to get to play second pair defenseman? Who's the guy? Like who, and are you going to get him for a good deal like that? I'm always mystified when I see fans and other media experts. Well, we got to trade away everyone and we'll get this cap space. Okay, well, replace it. Replace it with who? Who is the D man? Chris Letang's not going to fall in your lap. He's not going to come here for free. He's not going to come to play with Leon and Connor. He has played with Sid and Malkin. So you got to find a way to I hope Keith is back. I would like to see Keith back, because this is why. He plays with Bouchard again. You have Kulak, and I'm assuming in this situation, Barry's gone. Not that I'm running out of town, but Barry's gone and Broberg's there. Then you hope that the improvement by Broberg is good enough, or Kulak shows enough, someone can slide up and take Keith's spot. So now you got one of those two guys playing with Bouchard, and then maybe another guy can come in, or you find another replacement for further down. That to me is organic growth of a team. But right now, if you're trading away both Keith and Barry, and you got to bring in another top four D-man, like, who is it? And what are you paying for it? That you think number 29, the 29th pick's going to get you a top four D-man?
No, and it's a lot there's a lot on the to-do list. I mean, if Evander Kane is gone, and again, I believe he is, now you're looking at, you need a top six winger here. And if Puljujarvi's traded, you need a middle six winger as well, unless you can trade Puljujarvi for a middle six winger. Like, if you can swap Puljujarvi for a guy that would play in that exact spot where you would be earmarked for him, you can trade him for a third line right winger. Then you've done yourself a favor. You've moved a guy out and you've filled a need. And, I could see them maybe trying to do that, but you still need a top six right winger, I think, is the preference, so that Hyman can stay on left. So now you're looking at top six right wingers. And this goes back to, the Josh Anderson conversation. Stoff's been talking a lot about him for a while, and Bob doesn't do that for no reason. You look at his cap hit and his ability to score goals and his size and his speed. He's kind of a Evander Kane sort of, type, right? Big, strong, skates fast, can score some goals. He's not Evander Kane. But, at 5, what is he, 5.25 or 5.5, something like that. If he gets you 25, it's not the worst idea in the world. And it becomes about what assets go out the door to bring a guy like that back. So I think they need a bigger body and someone that can help take care of the fellas a little bit to play on the ice fairly often. I think Anderson would be a fit in those, fits a lot of those criteria for me.
Yeah, I've always liked Josh Anderson. So the length of contracts a little bit of concern, but I guess that's the world that we have to work around in. And then what's the cost, right?
4 more years at 5.5 is his contract, by the way.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the thing is, you do need to support these guys now. They need help now. And competitive player, no doubt, bigger body, they can skate. Like those are all kind of the criteria that I'm looking at. Like when you're watching the playoffs, those guys that can skate and have big bodies, you need those guys. You need them in your lineup, right? And so, there's an opportunity to take him. I think you have to look at it. But my preference would still be Kane. I'm not as quick to write him off as you are. Not write him off, but you think that he's out, and that's fine. I guess I'm just hoping more that he does come back. But contract length will always be an issue for me with Kane.
You've said all along. So on one hand, you talk about how bad you think they need him back and how hard they should try to get him. On the other hand, 3 years is your absolute max, right? And I'm here to tell you, I don't believe a 3-year deal is where this ends up landing. Like I just don't think that's where this ends up landing.
Yeah, and I can live with that, but I think you have to talk to him and say this is where we're at, and then you got to go find something else that's a solution. But I like the way you phrase it after they lost. This team had to take a step back, and you got to continue to build. Now, Ken Holland was adamant in his internal development, and I'm with him. He's got to get internal development. There's got to be, and we haven't even talked about Holland, but he could bring at some point to this lineup. But you've got to keep moving it forward and kicking this, improving. But you also got to manage your cap, which is a tough thing to navigate. But I would like to think for Puljujarvi, there's a warm body trade out there that you can get. I don't know how you're going to get a player that's as good. Like I think I just worry that that's a tough trade to win, because I do think he's a 25 goal scorer. I really feel that. I think he's going to be that. The problem is wherever he goes, it might not be there. I think here he's a 25 goal scorer, but wherever he goes, not
that's
guaranteed.
Just it. Who's he going to play with?
Goal scorer.
Yeah, who's getting him to that 25 if he's not playing with 29 or 97?
That's the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, he ain't going to Colorado to play with Nathan McKinnon.
No. And people compare him to Nichushkin. Nichushkin worked his way up.
Yeah.
Like I'll repeat that. He worked his way into that position. And you couldn't give that guy away at one point. In fact, he was even bought out, I think, wasn't he, by Dallas? So now all of a sudden this guy's going to get a massive payday. It took a long time for him to work his way up to it. And when he joined Colorado, he wasn't playing with the top guys.
No, he was a fourth liner. He was a fourth liner, and then he was a third liner, and then he was a second liner, and then all of a sudden he was playing on the first line in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But that's recognition. That's recognition of where you're at.
That's
and
exactly
accepting your role and digging in, and that's different stuff than I think what's happening.
So it's a fairy tale, right? It's the ultimate Nichushkin fairy tale. Well, he was a belle of the ball. Well, he wasn't a few years ago, not at all. And so, that's where I circle back to my comments about the agent. The agent has to have an honest assessment, or be able to have an honest assessment of his player and say, this is where you are, and this is what I think you can be, but you're not that now. And you've got to keep putting yourself in position to work your way up, because I think Puljujarvi could figure it out. I think he can figure it out here. But going somewhere else, you're not just also going to blossom to this 40 goal score. It is not there today. It is a journey.
Yeah. And listen, I'm not going to crawl into their conversations because I don't know what's said behind the scenes. But all I know is if that conversation was able to be had, it would have been had in his first year, where it was clearly you're not quite ready for this, and that's okay. You'll be back here real soon. You got to go do what so many great players have done before, and that's put 3 months in the American Hockey League.
Yeah.
It's just the way this is going to have to be. If those tough conversations were there to be had, they would have been had a long time ago. Yeah. And I'm not sure that they're had. And some agents go about their business different, right? They prop their guy up and they pump their guy's tires, and that's the way they go about it. And it works sometimes. Again, I don't know what is or isn't said, but if those conversations were had, I feel like they would have been had a long time ago. Lastly, and then I'll let you go because I know you got lots of hockey stuff on the go and camps and such. You mentioned goaltending really quickly. I think Jack Campbell is the number one target. I think it's going to be like 5x5 as a starting point. It's going to be expensive. There's a lot of teams that need goalies, and there's not a lot of goalies that could potentially come in and be starters. How would you feel about Jack Campbell at 5x5 plus million?
Yeah. I'm not a goalie guy. I don't know. you could tell me, Billy Husso, Jack Campbell, Kemper. I mean, I don't know. I would, yeah. So
You're such a grumpy defenseman. You're such a grumpy defenseman.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
stop the pucks and then give them to me when you get it.
You have all these guys that, all these stats and people who are goalie guys that watch him, and I like his glove hand. I don't like this. And I'm not that guy. I don't know. I'll tell you what I am looking for. I'm looking for a solution. Even any of these guys can just give them above or just average goaltending, and it's solved. I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's move forward, because the Oilers need to have I guess cost certainty, but also where they know this is where we got, this is our guy. And Jack Campbell, I watch his press, and he seems like a pretty honest guy. He gives himself a pretty honest appraisal of how he plays. He wants to do well for his team. Are the Oilers a better defensive team than the Leafs? I'm not sure that's the case, but I think maybe they're being coached to be better defensively. Yeah. They have the same star power or more up front. So in some ways, there's similar things. What I do like is Campbell's played in a really tough market. Toronto is a tough market to play in. So he's used to that. He's not going to hide, and he doesn't seem to be a guy to hide. So if that's a guy 5 times $5 million, would I rather have him at that or Markstrom at higher? Well, the Oilers got to Markstrom, so I could see it. I mean, I'm not, I guess, Shogger, I honestly, I'm going to leave this up to what I call experts. Yeah, like just... I think a longer, but we haven't even talked about Skinner. And I'll leave you with this. Skinner, can he push Campbell? I think if the Oilers can get Skinner to push Campbell, so that he's, maybe not year 1, but year 2, 3, or 4, or 5 of this deal, where he's eating some of those minutes up, I think that's a real positive thing.
So I'll give you my quick thoughts here. I think that Jack Campbell, he's got more experience than Husso. So there's more of a, like, Dreger's a bit of a cautionary tale, although he did deal with injuries, right? Sort of last year's hot guy that looks like he's ready to be a starter. I think you need to be sometimes cautious with those guys, although it worked out well with Cam Talbot. But I think the point you made is the critical point. If Husso's coming in, the question you have is, how will he handle being a starting goaltender in a Canadian market with that pressure and all those eyes on him? And you don't know the answer to that. You do know the answer to that with Jack Campbell. So not only does Campbell have more experience, but he's also proven his mettle in this type of a situation. I think he's good friends with Zach Hyman, and I think that helps the situation. And I think that he's the right person. Like, if you watch that Leafs, I won't even call it a documentary, I'll just call it a Leafs, behind the scenes video. And you saw the presence that he had with the players in the room and their appreciation for him. And, he just seems like a real quality guy. And I think to have that guy be your starting goalie, I think he's going to help Stuart Skinner. I think he would be a guy who'd be a good teammate and a good running mate for Stuart Skinner. And I think Stuart Skinner needs to be allowed, Struddy, to just come in and be whatever he's going to be next year. No pressure, no nothing. If his play dictates that he gets 15 to 20 starts, then you need a guy that can carry the rest of that water. If his play dictates he gets 35, then you need a guy that's going to be okay with that. You need a bit of a chameleon in the starter spot because you have some hope in your next guy. And I think that Campbell and Skinner as a combo would make a lot of sense, even if the price tag is a little bit to chew on.
Yeah. And the expectations for the Oilers are the same as for the Leafs. And the Oilers had really good luck taking things from the Leafs. Barry, Hyman, they've done a really good job of taking things from them. So this would be another good example of that. But knowing and playing with really good players, and then the expectations that come with that, it's not easy. It is not easy. So I think, maybe we've talked ourselves into this. And listen, if he's a guy that can be, like I said, average or slightly above average for the Oilers goaltending, I'm all for it. Like, people want a stud. Who's the stud? Who's the stud out there? Like Gibson? Is that the unicorn we all want? Well, maybe, but what's the cost to get him? And is he truly the guy? Is he the guy? I don't know. I have my doubts.
All right. That was the breakdown, brought to you by Park Mazda, your dealer for life in Sherwood Park off Y Road. Visit parkmazda.ca. I am on a plane tomorrow heading to the draft. I just hear nightmares about traveling right now, though. I had multiple people text me and say, do not bring a check bag. Apparently it was like 3-4 hours for some people to get their bags at the airport in Montreal.
Jeez.
So I don't know, buddy. It's a bit of a zoo out there, it sounds like.
Well, good luck.
Yeah, thanks. So if I'm bored and stuck on a tarmac, I'll be texting you. So start returning my bloody texts. You're my business partner here.
Yes, I got it.
What do you have going on? You got some hockey schools going on with the kids and stuff?
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah. I started, I do D-man camps, and I started some for younger kids. I love working with the young kids. Like, these kids are, I guess 10 and under, down to a couple 5-year-olds. And I love it. I know people are like, you're crazy, but I love those young kids. I feel if you can get them off on the right foot, enjoying the game and improving, obviously, I mean, I'm not there just to entertain them. I'm not a circus clown, but I do enjoy that. I love it. And I'm lucky I have my son helping me with the younger kids, and it's a lot of fun. It's just a really, I love working them, and they're improving every day, and the parents are always amazed, but it's kind of put them in the right environment, right, where they can feel safe and enjoy themselves. That's
great, man. Love the passion. And you're on Gregor's show this afternoon.
I'm back there today. He's heading down to Montreal too, so I'm sure you guys will have some good times.
Yes, we shall. So are you holding down the fort then on the Gregor show?
He says he'll be there on time.
Oh yeah,
but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm on I think they call it standby. So I could be from 3 to 5 or 2 till 6.
That's awesome.
Depends on what happens.
Right on. Well, Struddy, have a great day on the ice and a great show.
Thanks.
And we'll check in from Montreal. Thanks for doing this, pal. Talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Hey, Struddy, question for you. Have you ever tried putting in your own fence?
I sure have. Between digging the posts, mixing up cement and digging the holes, it's absolute killer.
It's brutal on the back. Well, listen, what if I told you could put in a fence without having to dig a hole or mix any concrete?
I'd be much more likely to come over and help you out.
Yeah, well, you're not the first guy I would call, but thank you for that. Listen, my brother's company, DLR Vinyl Products, they've come up with a system where you can actually put high-quality vinyl fence in the ground without having to dig a hole, without having to mix any concrete. They can teach do-it-yourselfers how to do it, and they can also work with contractors who might be looking to start installing vinyl. It's super high-quality product. The great thing about it is that it has fantastic longevity. You put it in, you don't have to worry about staining or sanding or anything like that. I've been lucky enough, Struddy. They've put in multiple fences in my different yards, and they've built me 3 decks. I have totally abused the fact that my family is in the fencing and decking business, but it's great product. Give Rob a call in Calgary or Rick a call here in Edmonton. This is a company my dad started. It's a family business. I'm super proud of it, and I'm very proud that they are our title sponsors. That's DLR Vinyl Products in Edmonton and Calgary.
Hey, it's Ryan Rishaug. While many are feeling the sting of inventory shortages, Park Mazda has you covered. They've got new Mazdas arriving every month, including the redesigned 22CX-5 in whatever color you're looking for. They've also got a huge selection of used vehicles with new arrivals every week and some of the most competitive interest rates on cars, trucks, SUVs, and more. Park Mazda, your dealer for life. In Sherwood Park, off Y Road. Schedule a test drive at parkmazda.ca.
All right, time now for LeBrun and Dregs, brought to you by Belvan Construction, specializing in the design, planning, and construction of restaurants, office spaces, professional clinics, and retail spaces. Visit belvanconstruction.com as we welcome in Darren Dregs on video and courtesy our Average Joe's phone line, Pierre LeBrun from Parts Unknown in Ontario. Pierre, where are you, buddy? You're en route to the draft via vehicle.
Yes, after some of the airline experiences that I had in the playoffs, including the Cup final, I decided to drive from my cottage to Montreal, about a 7-hour drive, and I'm a couple of hours in here. Got an early start today, so I'm driving right through Algonquin Park. For those listening in the Edmonton area that have been out here before, it's beautiful.
Nice. Well, we'll put the caveat on this hit too, that service might be really sketchy. So if Pierre suddenly just falls off the face of the earth, nobody panic. We've just lost him. And Darren Dregs and I will forge on. Dregs, you're taking a train, right? You're avoiding the friendly skies too?
Yeah, planes, trains, and automobiles for the TSN crew this trip, no doubt about that, for the same reasons. The train is a little quicker. If I jump on from Oshawa, it's about a 4.5 hour train ride and likely a 5.5 hour drive. So, business class, Ryan, you know how I roll. So, I'm going to be able to have the phone on, as is Pierre, and don't have to line up to get our bags and go through all the nonsense that you have to go through at Pearson and Montreal International.
Yeah, so I'm flying in tomorrow morning, and I heard stories about 2 and 3 hour waits for baggage. So I'm taking my wife on this trip. So I went and talked to her yesterday. I said, "Listen,
whoa, baggage."
I said, "What are the chances we can do this with a check without a check bag?" And she just looked at me and said, "No chance." Like, absolutely no chance, because we're going to spend a couple of days after. So we will be flying the skies and we'll be checking bags. So I may or may not see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see. Pierre, well, we've got a signal with you. Why don't you update us on what's happening in San Jose? Lots of reporting about Mike Greer being the final guy there. And sounds like that's pretty much done.
Yeah, he's going to be announced as GM later today. Really extensive, long GM search and process by the San Jose Sharks. They started with like names on a list. I think they spoke to at least 20 in terms of informally, and then they did about a dozen interviews, and then they cut it down to 4 or 5 guys, and you believe ended up with the likes of Scott Bellamby, former assistant in Montreal, Ray Whitney, former Shark, works with NHL Hockey Ops, Scott Nickel, AGM with the National Predators, but ultimately Mike Greer will be named GM later today. Former Shark as well. It was with the Rangers front office, and kind of a neat story. So we'll, a bit of a learning curve as well, no doubt, taking a chance on the younger guy, but interesting story.
Former Oiler too, right? I heard back in the day when I marched through the halls and dressing room of the Oilers, 97, 98, Mike Greer was a big piece of that team. So it's been interesting to just gather some of the reaction from around the National Hockey League. It's all very positive, as it should be. And what it speaks to is, Mike Greer's ability to learn on the fly. This guy is a sharp dude. The New York Rangers probably looking back or wondering if they should have let him go as quickly as they did. But he's going to do well, but no different than Chris Drury or any other young general manager. He is literally going to have to learn on the fly, and that does take time. His first GM meeting is likely coming up here, and he'll probably sit quiet as a church mouse in that meeting for the first few cracks at it. But he'll be welcomed with open arms. Good hockey people are always welcome.
Absolutely. And a trailblazing hire. And we wish him absolutely nothing but luck in San Jose. Pierre, you kind of, you rocked everyone's world here in Edmonton the other day when you dropped Claude Giroux as a potential target for the Oilers. And I'm wondering if this is one-sided, if there's interest on both sides. You've covered this player for a really long time. You know him. What's your sense on how much fire there might be where you created this smoke?
Well, a lot that's going to transpire this week is going to influence where this all ends up. I mean, obviously, Claude Giroux can't talk to other teams until next week on July 13th when the market opens. But so first and foremost is I think Claude Giroux still would like to try and work something out with the Florida Panthers. That would be priority number one. The Panthers have talked to him a bunch of times here and to his agent, Pat Brisson, but so far that deal hasn't been there. And I think it's because there are cap issues in South Florida. And it's difficult to navigate. And, they're also they hope to bring back Ben Sherrod. I don't know if they can get that done. So there's a lot going on with Florida, but that would be number one for Claude Giroux, I think. And I quoted him as saying as much a month ago in a piece in the Athletic where he really would like to re-sign there. But there's also there's a bargain and there's a bargain, right? So I don't know if Florida can get it done. And so if Florida can't get it done and he goes to market, I mean, I would expect a dozen teams out for sure to Pat Brisson and to Claude Giroux. He knows that, he's coming off a career contract, right? I mean, he knows he's in for a different type of salary, but it's going to come down to a couple things. He's got a young family. He's got a 3-year-old boy, a 1-year-old boy. Where does him and his wife want to live is a big deal. But he's also chasing a cup, I think. So that's why I think Edmonton, I believe, would be top 5 on his list when you cut it down from a dozen or so teams that would reach out, in my opinion. But there'll be other contenders too. And I think one thing that I don't think Claude Giroux wants is to bounce around on 1-year deals the rest of the way here. He's 34. So I think also if a team is willing to do 2 or 3 years, that'll put them ahead of other teams.
Yeah, and if I can dive in here, guys, when I look at the Edmonton Oilers, Ryan, as all of us know, Kenny Holland and company are doing their due diligence on option A, B, and C. And, it depends on the term and the type of player impactfully that we're talking about here as you categorize A, B, and C. I feel like Evander Kane is still in the A category. They'd like to bring him back, but he's going to have to come off that 5-year term. And if he doesn't, then, the Oilers are likely going to have to move on. Giroux fits into that grouping because you know what you're getting. I struggle to see how he'd fit there other than, he's still an offensive-minded player. He can still put the puck in net, generate some offense. So secondary scoring matters to the Oilers. But here's one from left field, Ryan. And I know the Oilers have done their due diligence on Phil Kessel. So, Phil Kessel at 34, on a 1-year deal, maybe it makes some sense, but you got to wonder. I still think that Phil Kessel can contribute, but he's coming off a year in Arizona where he scored 8 goals. He had 8 goals. Now he's scored 399 career goals in over 1,200 NHL games. So if you're looking for a short-term, potentially affordable secondary scorer, I think Edmonton is turning over every stone. So you guys group them, Kane, Giroux, to Kessel. That just speaks to how widespread the net is that Kenny Holland is throwing out there.
I'm going to throw a couple other names out here. Ilya Mikheyev, although there's a difficulty created there because I believe he's rep by the same guy as Evander Kane, is he not? Is Milstein not his guy as well? So Mikheyev to me would be a fit in a lot of ways for the Oilers. He plays both special teams. He could score you 20 goals if you need him to, especially if he's playing with skilled guys. Yeah. But you guys were reporting on what his cap hit potentially is, which is in the high 4s, mid 5s. And then the other one for me, Pierre, is Josh Anderson. And I wonder if Evander Kane is moving on, if Zach Kassian potentially is being moved on, the Oilers are going to need some size. They're going to need some power, and they're going to need someone that can at least chip in looking after the fellas. So to me, a trade involving Josh Anderson could make some sense. The Habs, we know the right side of their blue line isn't that strong. The Oilers have Tyson Barrie. I don't know if there's a marriage there
what
or
it's
not.
But cost? I'll tell you. Xavier Bourgault.
Right. For sure.
And something. And I can tell you, I know Montreal asked for Bourgault as part of the Kulak trade. And Holland just said, yeah, we're not doing that. I mean, this kid's a good player. He's a really good player. It seems like rightfully so the Montreal Canadiens are wanting to stockpile, especially the French Canadians. But at least in Anderson, you get the cost certainty and everything that you just said, Ryan. I just feel like he's not untouchable by any stretch in Montreal, but Tyson Barrie's not getting that deal done. No, it'll be plus.
Of course. Pierre, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Dregs on Anderson. I mean, I think what's happening with Anderson is that the Habs are happy to have him be part of their retooling and their rebuild, whatever you want to call it. Like they see him as a guy that could be part of the other side of this roster construction. But there's also a line. And I mean, if a team goes to a certain threshold where they're putting out the kind of assets that, the Habs have no choice but to look at, then there is a possibility that he moves. So that's where it sort of is. Like the Habs aren't starting conversations with Josh Anderson's name with anyone. But teams have been calling, not just now. From the moment Ken Hughes took over as GM, I know that teams have been calling about Josh Anderson since last winter. Yeah. So he's just a guy that teams is a playoff difference maker, right? So we'll see where that goes. As for Ilya Mikheyev, I took a lot of flack from some Leaf fans yesterday. What I know Dan Milstein is going to want to get for his client. That doesn't mean he's going to get it. I'm just sharing what I know. Dan Milstein asked for his client, which is $4.75 to $5.5 million a year. Whether or not that materializes, I don't know. But I know one thing: you two have been around the first day of free agency for many, many years. Nothing ever surprises me anymore.
No.
Absolutely. Pierre, it sounds like you're hitting the mountains there. So we're going to let you get back to your drive, but thanks for joining us, buddy. And we'll see you in Montreal.
All right. Sounds good. Thoughts and prayers for your flight, Ryan.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. I'll probably end up seeing you on Thursday and most likely not tomorrow. Take care. Have a safe drive, pal. Dregs, what do you think on Mikheyev? Like just on the fit, and if he lands in Edmonton and can play with one of those two centers, what's possible there?
Yeah, I mean, anything is possible, Ryan. That's a beefy number, and I agree with what Pierre said. I mean, he's not carrying water here. That's what Dan Milstein expects Ilya Mikheyev to pull in the open market. Can he get you 20, 25? Yeah, with those offensive players in Edmonton, he can. There's so much to like about this guy. He is super fast. He can be frustrating too, though, right? Because of his speed, he generates a lot of odd man rushes and breakaways, but doesn't have the finish. He doesn't. And so that doesn't mean he's not capable. Again, what's the difference between a 20 and a 30 goal scorer? Well, 10 goals, obviously, but how do you get that extra 10? You've got to have silky mitts, and he doesn't have that. And maybe that's an area that he can work on, but there's so many other things he does so well. Again, we've saw the Colorado Avalanche bust through the NHL this year with attack with speed, right? Well, Mikheyev has that in abundance. He can kill penalties. There's a lot to like, but 4.5 to 5, that's a pretty big bite.
Yeah, for sure. I think he had 4 shorthanded goals, 4 power play goals, a good number of even strength goals. But to your point, when you're playing with McDavid and Draisaitl, the one thing you can't have is the play constantly dying on your stick because you can't quite make plays at their pace. And they've tried some players in there in the past, and that's happened. I just thought it might be an interesting option given his goal total last year and where that could potentially go. How about Connor Brown? We know there's a relationship there between he and McDavid. His name has surfaced in the past. Peter Chiarelli, I think, tried to get him. What do you think about that option?
Yeah. Connor Brown is a good, well-rounded player, Ryan. And from a character perspective, there isn't a dressing room in the NHL that couldn't benefit from having Connor Brown inside that room. Playing on the top line, he'd be offended by this, but I think it would be a challenge for him, even though there's history there with Connor McDavid. But if Connor Brown is in your top 9, you've got a hell of a hockey team just because of everything that he brings. And, when word comes out, in this case, Brown and the Ottawa Senators, that he's going to explore free agency in 2023. I mean, we're a year in advance of that. I mean, he's clearly sending the message to Pierre Dorian, the general manager, like, all right, bud,
go ahead.
I'm putting it out there. So if you think that I'm not going to explore, I am. And if you need to move me out, then so be it. I can tell you, Ryan, that and at the time it was kind of reported on, the Nick Paul trade to the Tampa Bay Lightning did damage to that room. And especially now when you look at the deal that Nick Paul signed, 7 years at, $21 million. So around $3 million AAV. Ottawa wasn't willing to go to anywhere near $3 million, but we all watched what Nick Paul did. But we couldn't see what Nick Paul did away from the ice. And Connor Brown, Brady Tkachuk, all the leaders of the Ottawa Senators, man, they were crushed when Nick Paul was traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, you know what? Maybe some of these guys are going, we put in our time here. We put in our time, but a lot can change. This is a big year ahead for the Ottawa Senators.
21 goals a couple seasons ago in 56 games. Kind of had people thinking about Connor Brown in a different way. 10 goals last year in 64. Yeah, there's an engine there. There's a motor there with the way he plays that I think would fit well. One of those puck retrieval guys to play with the high skill guys for sure. What about in net? So the Oilers, listen, Skinner will be the backup, and I think they need to let Stuart Skinner come in and just kind of be whatever he needs to be next season. They're going to need somebody that can carry the bulk of the workload. Jack Campbell, I believe, is at the top of their list in terms of interest, goalies that they have interest in, Dregs. You watch him play every day out there. What are your thoughts on Campbell's ability to really carry the workload and to do that in the microscope that is Edmonton? Because he's done that out there.
Yeah, look, we reported a bit on this last week, and it's, just what's going to become of Mike Smith. The representation is the same. It's Kurt Overhart that manages both Jack Campbell and Mike Smith. I believe Smith will be on long-term injury. And then what do you do, with the free agent market? Is there a price point that makes sense for Jack Campbell? The Oilers have done their research here. Everything from diving into past history, type of guy Jack Campbell is, all of that. I think Campbell is number one on their list. I think most believe that St. Louis is going to do something in goal. So what does that mean for Billy Husso? What's going to happen with Darcy Kemper and the Colorado Avalanche? So those would probably be the three top guys, with, again, Campbell at the top of the list.
And in terms of that attitude, right? I mean, I watched that behind the scenes Leafs program, and the presence that he seemed to have with his teammates, they really seem to like him. Seemed like a popular guy in there. Takes a certain attitude to come into markets like this and handle a starting goaltending job and grooming the next guy at the same time. I think there's probably a relationship there with Hyman. It seems to me that, Campbell seems like at least the right guy for how much that matters.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He was criticized in Toronto at times for absorbing too much of the blame, right? And I didn't feel like that was as prevalent this past season as it was the year before. And maybe he's worked on that with sports psychologists and whatnot. Very likable guy, works hard off the ice. I mean, I haven't dug too deep in trying to find out if there's any, skeletons in the man's closet. I don't believe that there is, but a very popular teammate. And that's why it's curious to me, what's Toronto going to do in goal? They've got this piece that, as of 3-4 days ago, they hadn't even talked numbers with Kurt Overhart as to what that deal could look like for Jack Campbell to stay in Toronto. And I'll tell you this, I don't think that's going to go over well with his teammates. I don't, because, especially if they don't know yet, and I don't think Toronto knows yet, what's plan A? If Jack Campbell isn't, the guy, then who is the guy? And, as much as it used to be, Ryan, you remember this, Kevin Lowe would always remind me, it goes back to the Chris Pronger days when the Leafs were trying to acquire Pronger, and Kevin Lowe basically said, well, I'm not going to watch him every Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada in Toronto. Well, it can be reversed as well. What if Jack Campbell goes to the Edmonton Oilers, the Oilers flourish, and Campbell is a rock star? He's capable of being that if he can be healthy. That's not going to sit well in Toronto. So it's a curious one, but again, I know Edmonton is high on Campbell's list. There was some wondering about that. He would have no problem signing with the Oilers, and the Oilers seem to be high on him, but you got to talk numbers. And what does
that $5 million
look like? It'll be $5 million. I think
5 times 5. Okay.
Yeah. I think the term is maybe where you can, you always can be a little bit creative. Is 5 years going to matter to Ken Holland more than 6 years? Well, maybe 6 years is more palatable to the team if the AAV is under 5 million, right? So we'll see. But both teams know they need a goalie, and there isn't much available via trade, and there isn't a whole lot available via free agency. But, the tricky part here, and maybe it's where Edmonton is at as well, is, these goalies who are free, they want to win. They want to win. So the fit from a hockey perspective has to be right. And that's an advantage to Edmonton and Toronto.
It is curious in Toronto's case that they've got this guy it's not like he's going to be $7 or $8 million, and he's shown that he can largely do the job. He's well liked. And they haven't really gone down the path with them. Like, does that lead you to believe maybe they got something in their hip pocket, or like is Fleury wrapped up, or like it is curious, their tactic here.
No, I hear you. And yeah, we wonder all the same things here. Or is there something about Jack that the rest of the league needs to find out before they sign him to a longer term? And I'm not talking about the greasy stuff. I'm just talking about, what would their concern be from a health perspective? His ability to bounce back from injury, all of those things. I don't know. It's just a weird situation. And, you know, Leaf Source as of this morning flat out said, look, going into this week, and it'll be a busy week as it always is going into the draft and then free agency, goaltending is priority one. Well, if it's priority one, you know, how can you not crunch the numbers with Jack Campbell and Kurt Overhart? How can you not do that? What if Jack Campbell was willing to say, you know what, I'll play for under 5? Yeah, you're not signing a free agent for under 5. Even if it is Marc-Andre Fleury, it's not impossible. I know Billy Guerin wants to keep Talbot and Fleury together in Minnesota, but if Flower thinks his chances are better in Toronto or Edmonton, what about Colorado? You know, Colorado hasn't got a deal done yet with Darcy Kemper. Joe Sakic, he's got a ton of contracts to deal with. You know, maybe Fleury wants to go to Colorado and try and help them defend the Stanley Cup. So it's an interesting goalie market, and Toronto will be a big story because of everything we've talked about. And that's the uncertainty of that position and what their next move might be there.
Seems like a weird year to venture out into the free agent goaltending waters. Like there are so many sharks in the water, you know, searching after the same thing. It'll be interesting to see how it fleshes out with the Leafs. Lastly, Dregs, and we'll let you go. I know you got a train to catch. What is the outside view on Puljujärvi and his value when you, I don't know, if you speak to other, you know, people from other teams about him, what's your sense on this player's value and the outside world view?
Well, I'm not going to suggest that I've done the deep dive on him. I haven't, but, you know, I was just reading speculation over the long weekend, you know, from varying reporters talking about, oh, I think he'd be a good fit here. I think he'd be a good fit there. Well, 2 of the teams that were speculated on, I reached out to just again for background and was flat out told no interest. Now, that's not a crushing indictment of Jesse Puljujärvi. You know, maybe they just don't see the fit, or they don't have room and they've got a younger player that they're more interested in. The impression is always better outside of the market than it is inside the market, right? Yeah. I mean, you can say that about any player on any team, but you know, I don't think that the Oilers are looking for a ton. And I think that there would be enough intrigue based on, you know, what you're getting from Jesse Puljujärvi that the interest will be there. Yeah, it will be. It like I said, it may not fetch a great return, the package that you're looking for, or maybe it's part of a bigger deal. I don't know, but he's viewed on better, I would say, outside the market.
Yeah, well, 36 points was a career high for him. I think he views himself as a top 6 forward. I'm not sure anywhere he lands will view him that same way, but we will see if this Puljujärvi saga finally comes to an end. All right, that was LeBrun and Dreger, brought to you by Belvan Construction, specializing in the design, planning, and construction of restaurants, office spaces, professional clinics, and retail spaces. Visit belvanconstruction.com. Dregs, thanks, my friend. We'll see you in Montreal, and hopefully we both get there on time.
Well, I'm going to get there before you. That's pretty obvious. So we'll probably have a little side bet as to when the Rishaugs will be strolling in.
If it's any time before the draft starts, I'll be happy. I'm going into this travel day with zero expectations. So we'll see you out there, pal. Thanks.
All right. Good luck.
If you're a business owner looking for a general contractor to build or renovate your business, no matter how big or small, Belvan Construction should be your first call. Specializing in the design, planning, and construction of restaurants, office spaces, professional clinics, and retail spaces, Belvan can assist you from start to finish. Learn more by going to belvanconstruction.com.
Folks, golf season is just around the corner, and I don't know about you, but I am some kind of fired up over it. It's the perfect time to get yourself fitted for new clubs or some great new apparel. Well, DeBoers has you covered for all of it. Their facility is first class with amazing TrackMan technology in their simulators and top-of-the-field fitting specialists. You can order now for spring delivery, and they've also got a bunch of new 22 apparel for you to go check out. It's a fantastic group down there at DeBoers. The shop has a great positive feel. I highly recommend you check them out on the corner of 53rd Street and 99th Avenue. DeBoers, helping you play better golf since 1999. Average Joe's Sports Bar in Sherwood Park has proudly served the community and supported minor sports in the area for almost 20 years. It's a great gathering place for sports fans. Average Joe's has massive big screen TVs, comfortable seating, and a friendly staff waiting to make your experience anything but average. Come check it out on Baseline Road, right next to Home Depot, or make a reservation by calling 780-417-1113. That's Average Joe's on Baseline Road in Sherwood Park.
All right, time now for Who's Got Your Back, brought to you by DeBoer's Golf Shop and Fitting Center. DeBoer's helping you play better golf, your local golf shop here in Edmonton for the last 23 years with golf season well underway. It's a fantastic spot to go check out if you need anything for your game. Clubs, they got you covered. Apparel, they got you covered. Need to practice up a little bit. They've got the awesome TrackMan simulators in the back. They got a putting green. They got friendly staff. Anything you need when it comes to your golf game, go see the crew down at DeBoer's. Really excited about today's storyteller. Yes, Edmonton Oiler fans know him well, and he's done it pretty much all with the organization. He's won Stanley Cups. He's hoisted the cup in that Oiler uniform. He has been the head coach. 8 seasons he was. He's been the general manager. You've watched him on broadcasts for Sportsnet periodically over the last number of years as well. An all-around really, really solid, funny guy. And I know he and I definitely banged heads a few times over the years. That's what reporters and head coaches have a tendency to do if they're both doing their job properly. But have a ton of respect for Craig MacTavish, who, if you had not heard, just recently took a job with the St. Louis Blues, getting himself back behind the bench as an assistant coach on Craig Berube's staff. So we are really excited to have, courtesy DeBoer's, on Who's Got Your Back, Craig MacTavish. He is ready to find himself back behind an NHL bench once again. Mac T, how are you, sir?
Oh, good. Thanks, Ryan.
Good. So, listen, what's your level of excitement, Craig, to be to know that you're going to be spending next season back on the NHL trail and right down in the fray again, where you spent so many years?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it for sure. Last winter, as you and I have talked about before, it was a long winter for me. It really was the first winter that I wasn't actively engaged in the game with the team in some capacity. I did a bit of broadcasting for the Oiler game with Gager and Struddy, but really was not busy enough, and was bored out of my mind pretty much all winter. But so I wanted to try and find something that was a little bit more engaging going into next year, and I was lucky enough to find the assistant coaching job in St. Louis, which I think is exactly what I'm looking for. I wanted to get back into the coaching. I wanted a lesser profile position, and just to have some fun and maybe lend my experience to an organization, and more importantly, some players.
Yeah, you go into a situation here where, Craig Berube is the head guy. They've got a couple of younger guys in Van Ryn and Ott that are on staff as well. But they maybe needed to add a little bit of experience there, Craig. So what's your relationship with Berube, and what will your role look like there?
Well, I played a bit with Craig in his short tenure when he was here with the Oilers. I mean, I always enjoyed my time with him as a player. He's a fantastic person. I don't know too much about his coaching other than the fact he's really good at it. Obviously had an amazing impact when St. Louis had the coaching change 3 years ago, and he came in and led the team to a Stanley Cup from pretty much near the bottom. And I mean, that stuff stuff just doesn't happen. Yeah, and so obviously did an amazing job. I think he's got really good perspective on where the game is and what the game's all about. So I'm looking forward to that. Steve Ott is on the coaching staff too as well. I had
I had him at one of the World Championships when I was coaching Team Canada in Germany. He was on the team, and what a great competitor he was, and
all kinds of character too.
Yeah, he's a character for sure. So I know him a little bit from that experience, but in talking to Craig and Doug Armstrong, he really shoulders a lot of the offensive responsibilities on the coaching staff, which, on the surface, you wouldn't really think that based on the way that he played, but apparently a real creative offensive coach, and does the power play with Craig Berube. So, I'm really, and for me, I'm excited just to watch somebody else do it. I haven't been an assistant coach since '99 when I assisted Kevin. Had a wonderful experience, just a great season with him. And, when you're the head coach, you really, you really don't get exposed to that many different things. I mean, there are areas you can go to try and get exposure to different ideas, and maybe a better way to describe a similar tactic or skill. I mean, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how somebody else does it.
And on a night where maybe things don't go your way, you get to just put your feet up in the chair and let him walk into the media room and take the bullets. That's maybe an added benefit, hey?
Yeah, those weren't always the most fun exercises at the end of the game, where you've got some explaining to do. You got to go in there and explain what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how you're going to prevent it from going wrong the next day. But I won't miss that. Most of my dealings with the media were pretty good, and had a pretty good experience there. But when you get beat, it's never, I mean, the head coach is always the guy in the organization that takes the defeat the hardest. Yeah. And, you have to go in there and coherently explain what happened. But no, that'll be Craig's job, thankfully.
Yeah. And if there's any arrogant young 20-something reporters that think they know it all, that want to fire a bunch of fastballs at him, he can be the one handling that instead of you this time. No, I don't know anybody like that at all, Craig.
You start with the absolute worst thing that happened in the game, and then you progress to the second worst thing that happened in the game.
And then right on through. Well, I'm glad we get to have this conversation, because we definitely banged heads a few times over the years. I thought it was always sporting, and for what it's worth, Mac, you were always, man, like, we've covered a lot of coaches, and you stood in there. You were great with us, and I think there's always going to be those little conflicts, but it's funny, no question. Back in the day, you roll into town and you got your journalism badge and your right to ask whatever the hell you want, and you probably overdo it a little bit here and there. And I thought I always appreciated our relationship. You'd brush me back every now and then when it was needed, and I definitely came in hot in a lot of different instances, but definitely always appreciated the discourse, even if it got a little heated.
Well, I didn't take it personally when I saw your interview of Joe Thornton after they won the Olympic gold medal. Do you remember that?
Do you mean, was it Joe or was it Sid? Do you mean after they won?
Joe. I think it was Joe Thornton, and it was something about lack of playing time or ice time or something like that, how he felt about it. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and so I know what you're talking about, Mac.
So at that point, I didn't take it personally.
I can't remember if I went at him exactly like that, but I do recall, and this is it's funny you bring this up. Yeah. This is the, if I had a take back in my career, it would be this one. And I won't go into all the details, because it's probably almost disrespectful to Joe to do it, but I did a between periods interview with him. during one of the games, and Mac, like, the question just got away from me. I didn't mean, you don't go in intending to be offensive or insulting, but every once in a while it just kind of gets away from me a little bit. And I asked Joe a question that was so unfair. And the lucky thing for me was it was being put on tape between periods. And Joe just looked at me and went, "Are you effing kidding me, Ryan?" And he just turned around and walked away. And I sat there thinking, what the hell just happened? Like, how did I let that happen? I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
And he just pissed off Joe Thornton mid-game. And you know what? Joe was great about it. I apologized the next day. I just said, "Look, man, that totally got away from me." And he was good. Give me a fist bump and he was fine. But yeah, it's we make mistakes too sometimes. And definitely over the years, I came in a little hot here and there, but tough question.
Did that go on the air? That interview with Joe?
No,
did that go on the air?
No, that one never went on the air. No, it didn't. What they did is they just decided to kill it because it happened between periods, and we put those ones on tape. And so the producer just said, "Look, I mean, obviously we can't use that." And listen, it was a terrible mistake. It was as big a stage.
Was that at the Olympics?
That was the Olympics in Vancouver, Mac. That was between periods. He scored a goal in the first period, and so we asked for him. And the question just got away from me. I didn't mean for it to, but it happened. And once you get going, you're, oh shit, now I'm on my way. And Joe's just looking at me like, "You got to be kidding me." So yeah, definitely. You're not the only one that I lobbed a few fastballs at over the years, and some of them were fair, some of them, debatable, I suppose.
No, that was funny. But I think I was working with TSN at the time. Yeah. But that's a few years ago.
You probably heard about it, because I certainly heard about it from a lot of my dregs, and my colleagues were quick to jump on me when that one happened. But whatever. It's all good. Joe and I were good afterwards, and we all move on. Interesting with you and the media thing, Mac, because we share a real good mutual friend in Steve Dryden, who's the quiz master behind the scenes at TSN. I know he's a huge fan of the work you've done for us on TV and continue to do. Did you ever want to pursue that more full time? Because without question, that would have been there for you to do had you wanted to do that, a little more often and a little more full time. But you always kind of it felt like it was always a quick stop for you.
Yeah. Well, this year I had thoughts of doing more of it. The one I went to Toronto right around the time, or right at the time, Kevin Lowe was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so I did quite a bit of it for a week and a half there at Sportsnet Studios at Rogers, the Rogers office building where they run all the shows out of.
Yep.
So yeah, I would have done more of it, but it didn't work out that there was that much there for me. I only really did the one stint in Toronto. And as you know, a lot of times when the Oilers are on the road, the studio work goes from Toronto.
Yes.
I mean, occasionally Gene will go on with the team on the road, but generally he'll be in Toronto and working out of Toronto. But I only really went there the one time. But I really enjoyed it here in Edmonton. I mean, the vantage point we have to watch the game is incredible. And, working with Gene is fantastic too, as well. He's so easy to work with and such a great person and Stoff. I enjoyed working with Bob Stauffer.
I was going to ask you, how was it with Stoff? I heard you on with him yesterday and you guys had a few laughs, and I thought you guys had good chemistry on the air. I thought it was great.
Yeah, he was great to me. I mean, whenever I'd be doing the game, if he was on the road, he would call me, or I'd call him in the morning, and he'd give me updated on the current stories and the lineup and stuff like that. And we talk a lot about hockey, as you know. Bob loves the game and has strong opinions about things in the game. It's really amazing when you think of the recall that guy has. I mean, things he remembers about about even my career that I don't even remember. I can't even remember some of the stuff, but he's got, I really enjoyed working with him, and, we could share a laugh with him at each other's expense, and it just kind of worked.
Yeah. Well, listen, for what it's worth, I thought you did a great job on the panel this year, and always enjoyed watching you on TV. You were on our team for a little bit there, and definitely enjoyed that. But it seems to me, Mac, like the coaching bug is something that's maybe never really gone away. Like you spent a lot of time at Edmonton doing it. You moved on from there. You put in some time in the American League. Went to the KHL for a little bit. It's like coaching. I don't know. Do you have that bug, and is that why you just kind of keep gravitating back towards it, do you think?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, I think if you talk to players that have done it, Gretz will tell you that coaching is the best vibe, the biggest vibe you'll get outside of playing in the hockey business. So I enjoy it. It's and as I said, I'm really looking forward to being part of another team and doing it in St. Louis with guys that I haven't worked with before. I think that's going to be very educational for me and enlightening. So it's always good to see somebody else do it. And even when I played, I knew I was going to get into coaching at the end, and I was always taking down drills and tactics from coaches that I had, whether it was John Buckler or Mike Keenan or Terry Murray, drills and things that I thought worked really well for me as a player, that I still keep the same book that I compiled back in those days. But, the game has changed in a lot of ways, but the on-ice portion and the execution, what you have to do to have success, that really has remained pretty constant. I mean, the way coaches coach has changed for sure. Much more of a collaborative effort now with players and coaches than when I played. And there was, you did what the coach asked you to do. He was the authority figure, and it was more of a dictatorial relationship with the coach than exists today. But today, not just in hockey, but society, when you're dealing with employees and so forth, that you have to get them engaged if you want to get the level of execution and the buy-in. And if you get greater buy-in, you're going to get greater execution, and then your performance is going to improve. But, and there's not a lot of practice time anymore in the NHL either. Like just, the schedule is merciless for the players. I mean, especially the good players. I mean, those guys, they gotta, you win and die with those players every night, and they have to be on every night if you're going to win. And, you're asking a lot from the players, and then you combine it with Olympic breaks and 6 or 7 mandated days off, breaks, and a day off a week. And really you don't, and somehow you got to get in 82 games. So when I coached in the American League, it was like a holiday compared to the NHL, because you coach Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you generally have Monday off, and then you have practice time, where you can recharge the batteries before the next weekend. The schedule is way different. But in the NHL, it's just like Groundhog Day.
Oh yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. She's a grind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And coaches talk about that all the time, the lack of practice time, but man, you got a nice group to work with. Like one of the best two-way centers of his generation in Ryan O'Reilly, and a great young player in Robbie Thomas. And there are some really, Braden Shen is there. There are some really nice pieces there. And when you look at, they put up as much a fight against Colorado as anybody this year.
Bigger fight than anybody.
Yeah.
They took them to game 6, 4 seconds. Colorado scored with 4 seconds to go on a tied game in St. Louis to almost get it to game 7. But
yeah.
And then
who knows?
I've watched them before dismantle Edmonton a few years ago with, when you watch good teams like St. Louis, and I thought they were really the best defensive team, every single pass is contested. Like there's no direct passing lanes. You're passing through skates, sticks, and the puck is always in jeopardy of being turned over because of how good they are defensively. And I remember going into St. Louis and watching us play the Blues, and it was amazing how little space there was out there for our guys to get to move the puck and try and create speed in their attack.
It's a great situation that you're heading into, Mac, and we certainly wish you lots of luck there. Listen, the name of the podcast is Got Your Back, and we always ask our guests if they have a story for us about a time in their life where, I don't know, someone came up big for you or someone had your back. When I present that notion to Craig MacTavish, is there something that pops to mind?
Well, there are many things actually, and I've been fortunate to work with a lot of great people over the years here in Edmonton that, you just take for granted that everybody's got your back, but it really is not the norm, I think, that we had here. I had such great support from the coaching staff that I had here, and obviously Kevin too as well. So there was a lot of examples of it, but the one example that I'll give is I took a penalty as a coach at the end of, I think it was the second period in a game. And I took it because I was arguing another call. So it put us in a terrible position.
Okay.
And we're 2-man down. And back in those days, I mean, every point was critical because we were always on the cusp of getting into playoffs. So, I mean, I felt terrible. And normally there's a reasonable amount of abuse you can level at the official without getting a second penalty. But this particular official, I can't remember who it is, he dinged me right away. And it was right at the end of the period.
Oh, man.
I had to go in there and tell the players that, that their dumb coach took a real dumb penalty, and we're now down two men to start the third period in what was a critical game. So I went in there and I was apologetic, and I felt terrible for the players to put them in that position. And Danny Cleary he's popped up and he said, "Well, let's kill it." And I thought that was fantastic on his part, and a little insight into the character that guy had. He was like, "Okay, yeah, well, so what? Let's go kill it." And we did. So I always appreciated that, Danny, and I always liked running into him. And a lot of the guys that I've coached over the years that I see that are in the game. I mean, there's Jared Stoll, works for LA, Matty Green, that I've run into quite a bit. I love running into those guys. And of course, Sean Horkoff and Danny Cleary are, climbing the ladder in Detroit as executives. So I really appreciated that from Danny. He definitely had my back, and I always like running into those guys on the road.
That's a great story, Matt, because I think people often think about a coach maybe supporting a player through a tough time, or a coach having his players' backs, or players having each other's backs. But that's a unique dynamic you introduced there, the idea that players would have their coaches back in different situations. Because I imagine when you make a mistake as a coach, and you feel like you've cost your players in some way, that's got to grind on a coach that cares.
Yeah, well, for sure, especially one that, is preventable, like a lack of discipline to yell at the official. That's a big one. But no, you have to have that relationship if you're going to maximize the potential of your group. And it's a two-way street with the relationship with players and coaches, for sure. And if you have that, which I know Craig Berube has in St. Louis, and certainly Woody will have here, that then you have something. There's a feeling you get as a coach when you're going out to play the game, that at times you know that the players are dialed in. And I mean, there are always players on your team, or normally there. I mean, I shouldn't take that for granted, because I know I did for a long time. But there are always players that, when you go in there as a coach and you try and dial up the team, there are always players you know that are going to come out and do what they need to do. And, you know, you need that relationship. Stevie Stales would be definitely one of those guys. Yeah. And if we came in and we were getting out hit and we need to compete harder and toughen up, you knew he was going out and getting in a fight. And Bucky and those guys, I mean, those Matt Green, I mean, I underestimated how valuable those guys were to our dynamic, because we had so many great characters over my tenure as a coach. Mike Greer, Ethan Moreau, Jason Smith. I mean, we had warriors. I mean, our talent level was maybe not as good as other teams, but what we lacked in talent, we made up for in competitiveness and toughness. And Matt Green and Jared Stoll, we traded both those guys. And I just assumed that, you know, pretty much everybody had that level of character, but it was, I was wrong. We missed those guys immensely. Yeah. And, you know, we had a lot of, we had a lot of try on our team, that's for sure. Bork and Ryan Smith and these guys, they were battlers. And competitive. That's when you're analyzing and when you're trying to draft players, like competitiveness, toughness. I mean, those two ingredients are really important. And sometimes they get trumped by a toe drag, or you know, skill is a little seductive, and you get away from the competitiveness, which is a mistake. But we had a lot of competitors back in those days.
And rode a lot of those competitors to Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final. It was an unbelievable run, and you guys just came up short. But man, everything you talk about is what you got. And obviously, in Chris Pronger, that helped. But yeah, and rode a lot of those. And Rolly, exactly. Rolly was great. Well, listen, Mac, I really appreciate you taking time to join me here on my little local podcast. We had a couple of good set twos over the years, but I always love catching up with you, and I really appreciate you taking some time. Thanks, my friend.
Pleasure, Ryan. Good luck. And where's your partner in crime, Struddy?
Well, Struddy's on a very, his contract says I only get him for 20 to 30 minutes a day. And he's already done his 20 to 30 minutes today. And I mean, you know, this guy, he's out on the ice. He's coaching kids. He's like, you can't drag this guy off the ice. So as we speak, he's coaching his kids and a bunch of other people's kids on how to be good off the glass and out defenseman.
An underrated quality.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. He's an absolute beauty. Yeah. Well, listen, when St. Louis comes through town, maybe you can give Berube the day off and you can come face the firing squad again. Like we'll be like old times.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks.
Okay. Best of luck out there, Mac.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. See you later.
All right, that'll do it for today's podcast, folks. Massive thanks to all of our sponsors: DLR Vinyl Products, Park Mazda, Belvan Construction, DeBoer's Golf Shop, and of course, Average Joe's Sports Bar here in Sherwood Park. I love that conversation with Mac T. And I love that he brought up the Joe Thornton thing, because I hadn't really told that story before. And I think that was a good way of Mac firing a shot back at me after all these years, making me tell that story. But it's all fair game. And we do wish Craig MacTavish luck out in St. Louis. Thanks so much for your downloads and your subscriptions, folks. We're heading to the draft. We'll probably drop a podcast somewhere along the way here between now and certainly after the draft, maybe free agency. And if there's breaking news, we'll also try and respond to that as well. So download and subscribe. All the latest Got Your Back product will be on your phone waiting for you. So please stick with us. It's been a ton of fun to this point. We look forward to continuing it, and we'll probably talk to you from Montreal. Cheers.